This is a story of World War I and of Charles Fletcher Hartley, an American who was killed in that war before U.S. troops became involved. The idea for the film originated with the centennial commemorative event organized for November 25th, 2017, in the French town of Fontaine-Notre-Dame, where Hartley had died 100 years before.
We're sitting here in front of the Menin Gate, which was constructed as one of the striking memorials of World War I. On the inside of the gate are inscribed the names of thousands upon thousands of young men who were killed in that war. Interestingly, there are no Americans listed on that list. I have with me here Doug Hartley, whose uncle served in that war and in fact was killed not far from here. Doug, could you tell me why there are no Americans listed in that scroll that's on the inside there?
The United States was actually not involved in the fighting. There were an estimated 30,000 young Americans who fought for the cause under various flags. Prior to the massive arrival of U.S. forces in early 1918, Charles Hartley was among those who joined the Allied forces, in his case the British Coldstream Guards, and fought with them.
But Doug, can you explain to me why your uncle served in the British Army? He served with the Coldstream Guards, is that correct? Can you tell us a little bit how he got into it?
Yeah, that's correct. He fought with the Coldstream Guards, which is a British regiment. Why did he do that? He was born and bred in the United States. However, in 1913, just on the eve of the war, his father decided to return to England, the land of his birth. So he took his family with him. My uncle Charles was in a British school and was at school when the war was declared. So he was at age 16 and he was anxious to fight.
In a letter addressed to his father Harry, Charles, while still in school, wrote this: "If a fellow does get killed, he can't die a better way than in a battle, and you've got to die sometime." Doug visited the headquarters of the Coldstream Guards at Buckingham Palace in London and spoke with the archivist of the Guards.
Here was a guy who'd been in the boxing team. He was 6 foot.
Yes.
A good guy to have on your side.
Yes.
He'd been at Harrow, therefore he would have known people in the Coldstream.
Yes.
And introductions would have been made. Yes. And they'd have thought, here is a nice person to have, we'd like to have him. Here we are in August 16. He went to the machine gun school at Grantham. Right. And this is part of his training. Right. And so he was being focused towards a specialist area of dealing with the machine guns.
Yes.
How did this war start? It lasted 4 years and resulted in millions killed, wounded, or gassed. In June 1914, a Bosnian student nationalist shot and killed the heir to the Austrian throne and his wife in the city of Sarajevo, Bosnia. The Austrians accused neighboring Serbia of being behind the attack and invaded it. In case of war, the Germans were bound by treaties to assist Austria. They were also the so-called Central Powers, while treaties between France, Russia, and England obliged them to intervene on behalf of Serbia against the Central Powers. The die was cast. In April 1917, the United States, angered by German submarine attacks on U.S. flagged vessels, declared war. However, it was not until March 1918 that the U.S. joined the fight against the Central Powers.
And where did he end up fighting?
Okay, he was here and he did fight in this Ypres area, which is what the monument is basically for people who fought and died in battles around this area. And these battles, there were several important battles, most famous being Passchendaele.
Is that where he was killed?
No, he was not killed there. He survived these battles as bloody as they were, and returned to England, and then was sent back to this area and was killed in a battle in Cambrai, which is in northern France, not very far away from here.
Doug was particularly interested in finding places in Europe where those killed have been commemorated. Because of its importance, one of the first places he visited was the Ring of Remembrance International Memorial à Blain-Saint-Nazaire in France. This magnificent monument contains the names of some 600,000 individuals killed in the war from both sides of the conflict. Tyncott, near Passchendaele, Belgium, where Charles also fought, is the largest British war cemetery in Europe. It is reserved for many thousands of men, some of whom may not have been found or identified. Those gravestones only say, "A soldier of the Great War." In 2014, Doug visited Cambrai and talked with numerous people who had no information about the monument to Charles Hartley. He knew only that it was below the Bourlon Woods, scene of heavy fighting, and that it was located in a farmer's field near the town of Fontaine-Notre-Dame. Patrice Doucedame, a community leader and key businessman in the town of Fontaine-Notre-Dame, was the first person to provide specific information.
The father of your uncle was coming after the war to know where his son died.
That's correct. Came to find out exactly where his son died because the body was never recovered. He came with a member of his son's machine gun squad who showed his father where his son had been killed, and it was in that spot that he erected the monument. This sign and others in the village were placed after the monument was found in 2014. As we prepared the monument for the ceremony to take place the following day, November 25th, 2017, I thought of the village and its people. After we found the monument, Patrice, his wife Sylvie, and their grandchildren took it upon themselves to remove the foliage which had grown up at the side of the monument and clean the stone and the inscription. I thought of how the town had been attacked, fought over, occupied twice in both world wars, its citizens traumatized.
The village itself became the center of heavy fighting, especially around the old railroad station in the town center. An attempt by Allied forces to dislodge Germans occupying the town is described to us by a distinguished historian.
I'm with Bernard Couvivier, who is a longtime resident of the town of Fontaine-Notre-Dame. And we are at present walking up a road which leads towards the old railroad station, which doesn't exist anymore, of course.
It's been demolished. Here, the attack relied on a massive attack. There were more than 400, in fact 478 tanks taking part in a large attack on a front of 8 kilometers. And they were supposed to go through the Hindenburg line and open a passage for the army and the cavalry. British to get hold of this railway line. And so the 2nd Brigade of the Guards went up on the 27th of November to try and reach and get hold of this station. It's a very, very short street, but many men fell to try and stay there before the counter-attack obliged them at 1 o'clock to retire.
And wasn't there a problem with the tanks?
Yes.
Because Cambrai is known as a battlefield for tanks,
Yes.
where they were used widespread. But
lot.
there was some problems.
Yes.
Could you tell us
Yeah,
a little
yeah.
bit about that?
A lot relied on the tanks, of course. Everything had been arranged so that the tanks would lead the attack. But here, the tanks were delayed. They had many mechanical problems, in fact. They were very difficult to maintain. And so the guards started before the arrival of the tanks, and they lost many men, and 38 officers, 1,000 men died in this very short street, very small location, not bigger than the playground of a school.
This is the only surviving tank from the Cambrai campaign. It was found by Philippe Gorzenski, an expert in tank warfare at the Battle of Cambrai. He personally located the tank buried in the ground and restored it. It's now in his museum in the nearby village of Flequières. He tells the story.
First, we identify the name of the tank, which was Deborah D-51. This tank is really a symbol for the Battle of Cambrai because we are in the heart of the battlefield of Cambrai. This is why to find a tank right on that place is very symbolic.
The Battle of the railroad station at Fontaine-Notre-Dame resulted in the loss of many tanks and the retreat of Allied forces. This failure of the tanks meant that the machine gun detachments were placed under highly exposed conditions. In the course of this battle, Doug Hartley's Uncle Charles, who was in charge of machine gun units, was killed by shrapnel to the head. In the town, the people prepared a ceremony to commemorate the centennial of the Battle of Cambrai.
Et ça me fait beaucoup plaisir, puisque bon, on n'a pas souvent l'habitude de recevoir des Anglais ou des Américains de la famille d'officiers ou même de soldats anglais qui ont participé à la Grande Guerre. Donc ça me fait beaucoup plaisir de vous recevoir aujourd'hui. Tous les ans, régulièrement, on a des cérémonies officielles où on associe la population et surtout les enfants des écoles pour remémorer un peu l'armistice de 1918 comme celui de 1945, et on a une journée nationale de férié pour justement fêter ces deux fins des deux guerres qui ont eu lieu en France en 1917 et en 1945.
Other Americans also lost their lives in the Battle of Cambrai. One of these was Lieutenant Herbert Windler of the British Grenadier Guards, who, like Charles, was from the area of Boston, Massachusetts. His memorial lies in the Bourlon Woods, on the spot where he was killed. Following the ceremonies in the town, the people of Fontaine Notre-Dame proceeded to Charles Hartley's monument to participate in the ceremony there.
The Coldstream Guards were founded in 1650. Since then, they have fought in almost every major conflict around the world. We have a proud history of duty to the Crown and country, and it is important that we continue to remember those who gave their lives so that today the Coldstream Guards can continue to be second to none.
Madame Elizabeth Gross lays the Hartley family wreath. Station of the flag to Madame Virginia Raymond.
On behalf of all those present, family members of Lieutenant Charles Fletcher Hartley, friends, and all the good people of Fontaine Notre-Dame, we are most thankful to be present at this splendid ceremony organized by this town to commemorate the centennial of the Battle of Cambrai. The Marquis de Lafayette came to our shores from France in 1775 to help the now United States in our struggle to oust foreign occupiers. This enabled us to win our independence. I would now end with a letter penned by Charles's mother, Jenny. He wrote very happy letters and seemed so happy in his life out there in the regiment. He returned home and did splendidly at the Battle of Messines Ridge on July 31st, 1917, for which he was mentioned in dispatches. He came home from November 7th to 21 and was killed in Cambrai on November 27th, leading his company into battle, our perfect, dearly beloved boy.
Here we are in front of the statue of General Pershing, right, Doug? And this was he was the general who controlled all American forces in World War I.
That's correct. President Woodrow Wilson in April 1917 named him to be the commander-in-chief of all the U.S. Armed Forces. At that time, the U.S. Armed Forces consisted of 47,000 men. By the time they arrived in Europe in February 1918, they numbered 2 million.
By the time the war was over, he was actually quite unpopular, wasn't he?
He was, because he had serious differences of opinion with the commanders of the Allied forces. He wanted to go for unconditional surrender, whereas the war ended with an armistice with Austro-Hungarian Germany in November the 11th, 1918. Over here, in the shadow of the White House, is the site for a monument which will be constructed and unveiled for the 100th anniversary, the centennial of the end of World War I, when the armistice was signed.
And I understand this was the war to end all wars, is that right?
Yes, but as we all know, it wasn't.